Hello. Been a minute. My air conditioner went out up here. You can see I got a new one on the wall. I'm not the kind of person who just wants to pay somebody to come fix something. I'd rather learn how to do it myself, and however long that takes, I'll do it. So I was up here tracking guitars from home for a while with no AC. It was brutal. Also, I was out of town on vacation for like a week and a half, but back now. And I promised I would get to some questions that were left on the channel. So I'm going to do that first. This is going to be kind of a mailbag episode. And then I've got some songs to get to. I'm loving the new air conditioner. It's dead silent. I don't have to shut it off to play acoustic guitar, which I used to have to do, which was brutal in the summer and in the winter, because it was a heater and AC, just like that. It's got a heat pump as well. What I had up here and what was in the house when we bought it was one of those wall units that you see in a hotel room, and it's just super loud. And yeah, actually, I think it kicked on in the middle of one of my videos way back when, and I jumped up to shut it off or something. I don't know. Anyway, we're now in the ideal situation. So, first question. This is from Brody Frazier. It says, "Hey Justin, thanks for your videos. Super helpful to see your approach. I have a couple smaller producers I do session work with, and I wanted to see how/if you would push back on a producer asking you to potentially track guitars to a click with either just a work tape, which is not cut to click, or just scratch drums, like kick and snare on a click with the work tape. It's super tough to record respectable guitar tracks with nothing for inspiration, but if I record my own drums, keys, and textures to give some inspiration for the guitar parts, the producer loves when I do this, I feel like I'm doing more co-producing than guitar playing. Am I misguided? Thanks." This is a hard one to answer, and I think ultimately only you can decide if it's right for you to go above and beyond like that. To be honest with you, I have some of the same situations. I have some clients who want my guitars first, and then the vibe that I'm getting, they want drums to play to that and bass. And so I've just got to play to the click and come up with the right energy in the right spots. I've been doing this for a really long time. Well, I guess I've been full-time since late 2014, early 2015. I can get away with cutting just guitars to a click, even if it's a rock song, and it doesn't really affect what comes out. But having said that, I think your producer should, if they're going to give you a work tape to play to and that's it, they should at least give you a work tape that's been chopped and gridded. I have one client who does that, and he builds programming to the work tape. The work tape, for those of you who aren't familiar with that term, that is the working roadmap of a song that the songwriters record at the end of a writing session when they have finished the entire song. So it's usually some guitars in the room, it's usually recorded on actually it's usually recorded in voice memos on an iPhone. And then it's just a couple writers sitting around with acoustics playing chords. Sometimes they're not even playing the same chords, and you kind of got to discern with your ear what's right and what's not. And then there's no click. They just want to get the melodies that they've written, the lyric that they've written, and the structure that they've written down so that they don't have to try to memorize it when it's time to go get it cut with a band. And they will send this work tape to a producer if they're going to build a track for it, or it'll get sent to the band leader on a session if it's going to be cut with a live band. So I get these work tapes a lot where it's really just guitar and vocal. And usually it's just really easy to write a chart, write down, because I can hear what chords they're playing on the guitar. Sometimes the person singing is sitting here like this, singing into the phone. And I imagine that the person playing guitar when they're doing the work tape is like on the other side of the room. It almost sounds like they're in the next room, and you almost can't tell what chords are happening. Um, that can be hard to write a chart to. But when you get to the studio and the writer shows up and, just have a couple questions. Hey, I think this is what I was hearing. Is this right? Sometimes, oh yeah, that's great. Or, no, but I like that better. Or, let me show you. And then you're off to the races on the session. But to answer Brody's question here, I agree. It's tough to record respectable guitar tracks with nothing for inspiration, without the drum groove, And if you're only being paid to lay a couple guitar tracks, it does seem to me that if you build a whole track for yourself to play to, you are spending a little more time than probably what you're being paid for. And we all want to try to be more efficient, right? You don't want to spend 4 hours on a track you're being paid $100 for or something like that. But at the same time, if you're new and you're trying to get your foot in the door, maybe you do take that time, because it's a learning process. That's part of the hours that you're putting toward these 10,000 hours to get to where you not only are competent at recording guitar, but excel at it in a variety of situations. So yeah, I think it's a really fine line to walk. If you are building drums, keys, and whatever to play to, and the producer likes it and he's willing to pay you for those tracks as well, then hey, that's great. But you do need to talk about, at this point I'm co-producing, like you're having me start the entire direction for the track and building the band basically. If you're programming drums, which really means you're coming up with a drum pattern, you're playing a bass, you're laying some keys, and then you're playing your guitar so that you have the inspiration from this supporting band. If you're giving all of that to him, yeah, you definitely need to be paid for all of that, I think. There's going above and beyond to get your foot in the door, and then there's undercutting the entire industry that you're trying to break into. First one of those is good. The second one is bad, I think. If you are known as the guy who will do everything for extremely low rates of pay, you're going to stay in those extremely low rates of pay, just to be honest. There's a saying around here, particularly among the recording musicians, and that's that no is the password to the next level. And I think the best way to parse that out is to say that if you're not turning down some stuff and sticking to your guns of what I need to be paid this much per track. If you want me to open your song in Pro Tools, I need this amount bare minimum, even if it's to record one guitar pass, if you're not sticking to your guns on some level like that, then that's going to hold you back. So I hope that answers your question. Let me go through here. Yeah, it sounds like the producer loves when you go way above and beyond. Of course they do. Yeah, but if it becomes, hey, I'm paying you $100 for guitar tracks, and now I'm expecting you to give me an entire band track for me to have ideas, yeah, you need to have a talk with them. And it might seem like, it might seem like that's a really delicate situation to go into. That's because it is, especially if you don't have a ton of accounts, and that's one of the accounts that you do the most work with. I just feel like getting yourself into a situation like that, it kind of sounds like you've almost backed yourself into a little bit of a corner. And that can be hard to get out of that situation, to say, hey, if you want these tracks, I need to be paid for them. I'll cut you a major deal, even if you just use them for inspiration or whatever. But if you're just wanting my guitars, then that's what you're going to get. And also, it's a chance for you to make sure that all the energy that you are feeling while you're tracking is coming from your guitars and not from the drums, or from the bass track that you're playing to. Make sure that you have those sorts of patterns built into how your right hand is, what your right hand is doing. That's what's going to determine whether you're locked into a drum groove, and you can play by yourself, and your right hand can be broadcasting what the drum groove is, like if there's a push feel, or if it's straight eighths, or if it's got the there's different kinds of pushes. There's the eighth note push, 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. There's also a 16th note push, 1 and 2 and 1 and a 2 and na. You know what I mean? There's different patterns, and you can do that in your right hand to just a click without having to lay all that other stuff out. But if it's easier for you to do it right now and you don't mind spending the extra time, and it's a relationship you want to protect, keep doing it. If they're starting to take advantage of you, that's not a pattern you want to get involved in, that you want to let continue. Hope that helps. All right. Here's another one. And I did answer this, but I'll talk about it a little bit. This is from Music Production Videos, another YouTube account. I see so many players talk about their always-on pedals. How do you approach adding a bunch of guitar parts, building up a track from nothing? Are there indeed always-on pedals for each pass or part, or would that end up a mess? I guess I'm really asking about the tight, slap, and low-level reverb people use. Thanks for all you show us. And so my response on the page was that I don't really have any always-on pedals. My absolute best sounds and best reactions from the control room is when I bypass the pedal board and I'm plugged in straight into the amp. That's 100% true. When it's time to lay like a big guitar sounds, and I tune my guitar, unplug from the board, go straight into my basement, turn it up, and then find the sweet spot of breakup using my guitar volume knob, your guitar volume knob becomes wildly interactive with your amp when there's nothing between the two but a chord, right? When you're going through a massive pedal board, there's all sorts of impedance mismatches and buffers and pedals that aren't buffered, and some of the buffers might be great, some of them might be terrible. But you get that sort of living interaction between your guitar and the front end of your amp when there's nothing between them. And so for rhythm, like distorted rhythm sounds, I often do that, whether it's with a Tele or a Les Paul or a Jazzmaster or a baritone. I'll go straight in. And that's when people are like, dude, what are you using? I'm like, absolutely nothing. I'm going straight into the amp, like all the records that we grew up loving that got us into doing this, The rest of my answer, I do use a bit of verb often. That's true. While I'm tracking, I like hearing a little bit of space, and I think I have a couple of accounts that will say, hey, will you dry that out, dry that up, and I'll do that, obviously. But most of the time, it does not interfere with what the mix engineer is doing. Or I also really like slapback. Any kind of song that's got sort of a funky groove. I probably overuse slapback. If I overuse anything, I bet it's that, to be honest. I'm reading the rest of my answer here. I keep it low in the mix so it's not a gag. You don't want to be known as the guy who always uses a certain pedal. That is 100% true. People will quickly move on from that sound and move on from you if that's all you're known for. So subtle use to taste is best. I've learned this from guitar players that came before me. Lots of guys. One of the best at it, I think, is Rob McNally. He will use pedals that become, and he's often the reason they become wildly popular, but he'll use pedals that are super popular well past their, flavor of the month expiration date, but he's using them in really creative ways, really subtle ways that don't immediately make someone go, oh, that's that thing that everybody's overdone. It's, wow, what are you doing with that? What does that sound? And then he'll tell them like, oh, that's the Pog 2. Oh, really? Wow, okay, I've never heard anybody use it like that. like spend time to get to know all the things that you use. Don't just get one gag out of a pedal and then, wring every last drop of use out of it, and then you just got to discard it because you've overused it. Um, I think there's a lot of value in being really subtle with things and not overdoing them. You get a lot more use out of the gear that you are depending on, and finding new and different ways to use it. Okay. Excuse me. Last question. This is from Lindsay Miller, who's a fantastic guitar player here in town as well. She asks, hey, I don't know if you've addressed this before. Do any of your clients/producers request a separate DI dry signal on your remote tracks? Or are they mostly cool with you sending everything effects and all? I'm undecided on what's most efficient for the person mixing. Fantastic question. I have a few clients who really want DI lines from me. And mostly it's so that they can find the transient, like the initial impact of a strum or a hit without like a reverb tail or delay messing it up, because they're going to go and edit the snot out of the track. And I want to say there's one or two guys that I work for that will also reamp your direct line. They have a reamp rig where basically reamping is you isolate the guitar track that's being played as just a dry, clean, straight into the board signal. On its own, it's gross, unless that's what you're going for, the real clean, like no sustain, no body, kind of clean guitar tones. I'm thinking of like Strat parts in the 80s where there's like a, when it's straight into the board and there's nothing on it, super cool. But you reduce what someone's playing down to that, and then you can feed that into the front end of an amp and re-record it. It's called reamping, right? And it's that signal just as if it's coming from the guitar right into the amp. And so somebody could be playing through a Princeton reverb, on the session, and when they go to the chorus and they're supposed to be playing these monstrous chords, it's a 10-inch Jensen that's a little papery sounding or something, right? Well, if you've got a DI in front of the pedal board and you're running a line straight to the console where you've got your microphone going to tape, but you also have this DI line going to tape that's literally just the sound of the guitar's pickups straight into the console. You can then use that without all the effects that are on the amp line and run it into a 100-watt Marshall or a dual rec or something like that, and then you get like massive sounds in the chorus. So there are some people who do that. To answer Lindsay's question, I don't have anybody that asks for that from me at home. I think I did respond here. What did I say? Short answer is I don't do a DI line from home. But this is worth answering more in depth in a video. And she responded, hey, I don't use one either, but someone recently requested a fast turnaround on some tracks, and I thought in that scenario it might be beneficial since there's not going to be time to go back and edit. Also, a producer once told me they liked DI lines on heavily affected tracks just so they could see where the wave was landing on the grid. Exactly. Anyway, I look forward to seeing the video on this. It's mostly for editing, because they're going to take the drums, and they're either going to pocket the drums to the grid and then everything else to the grid, or they're going to use the drums and the way the drummer is breathing in the pocket, which is cool and leaves some humanity in the track, and then pocket everyone else to the drums. And in order to do that, they do need to see the very beginning of the transient of the waveform. That's mostly what people ask for it for, but again, reamping is another thing. And I think the people that hire you from home have some level of trust, right? with what you're going to do. They're willing, they're already willing to let you track by yourself without real-time input from them producing you over your shoulder. So there's already some amount of trust that they like what you do, and they're not going to want to have all the options in the world with it when you're done. So I, with almost all of my remote clients, which are also clients I see in the studio. Sometimes there's a whole record and we go track. Sometimes they just need some guitars on a song that they're producing that doesn't need a whole band. I do have people that I work for in both contexts, but all that to say, the ones who do call me to track remotely at home like what I do on the front end. And once again, I'm a source guy. I don't add anything after the fact. I will give options as far as like, here's a couple different solos if you want to, guitar player, teenager rocking out in front of the mirror guitar solo, here's an option there. If you want something that's singable, here's an option. There might be something that I wasn't necessarily hearing, but I know what this producer likes, and so I'm thinking ahead to what they're going to ask me what they're going to ask me for if I don't already give it to them from the beginning. And maybe that's a part that's just sort of with a wah effect or something, So I'll lay that just to have. And my clients don't need to use everything I give them, and I know that, but I give them more than I think they're going to want instead of less. That keeps me from going back and having to open the session and reacquaint myself with the song when it might be a week later and I've played on, anywhere from 40 to 80 other songs in between then. I'm like I said, my motto, give more than you think they're going to need. And to answer Lindsay's question, I don't. And I've never been asked to from home. On the quick turnaround stuff, I think from my end, I'm going to give stereo chorus guitars, big ones, even if it's just power chords. I'll give a diamond pass. I'll give some sort of rhythmic energy pass. I'll give options for verse 2 fills. If there's no solo, then there's going to be a leady kind of part that works behind the vocal in the bridge. If it is a big guitar song, then there's going to be stacked intro hooks. There's going to be multiple solo options. Solo guy's probably going to come back in the outro. These are all things that I think are expected. And when they need something quick, in my experience, if they're calling you and they don't have very much time, then they trust what you are going to do and what you're going to give them right off the bat. So I think commit what you're going to commit to tape, whatever gain structure you're going to have, whatever effects you're going to print them down. I print everything. My entire pedal board's going in front of my amp, so it's all coming out of the speaker or out of the XLR, and then the people are stuck with that. But they called me because they like the stuff that I give them that they're stuck with. So I think that's true for you as well and for everybody. And again, different clients are going to want different things. If things are specified, then yeah, I'm happy to do that. I'm very, very flexible. I'm not going to say, no, you can't pay me money to do that. Just going to do it. So yeah, I don't do a separate DI line at home. I've just never been asked. And the clients who call me to track from home trust me enough to let me record without them in the room. So cool. I have 8 more songs to get done this weekend, so I'm going to get to it. I'll see you guys later.